Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very accomplished entrepreneur, a fellow YPO member from Singapore, Kathy Sheehy. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very privileged to be asked to be on this show. Very excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy is the co-founder of KittyKat, which is a tech-enabled content service for brands. She has a strong background in brand building, social media, and communications. And as I mentioned a little earlier, she's a member of the YPO, and she's the incoming global chair at YPO's Business Women's Network. So, Kathy, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief.
So in brief, I started at 19 as a fashion stylist in a magazine. Those days it was print. So that's what we did. We used film and we used print. I went to the US and then I was like, oh my God, I need a job. And what I did was I went back to do a digital design degree and then became the first digital designer for Ogilvy in the US. And that opened the doors for me to a lot of digital products and digital strategies. Then traveled around the world, came back to Singapore, did Singapore Airlines, the magazine, as well as the digital strategy quite a number of years ago. And ran a wine business, and then now came back into what I call branding, digital assets, tech, everything that I love.
And as they say, the rest is history.
I hope so.
Well done. Well done. So, Kathy, when I was reading about you, you say that you recognize the transformative power of merging marketing and business strategies. Help me understand this and give me an example.
Okay. So I have always been in marketing and brand, and I always felt like, why is marketing always the first people that is like a cost center that's taken up? But actually, marketing supports sales and business. So they should come together. So for salespeople, it's all about transactions. For marketing, it's all about telling the story, building the brand. So why are these two hands not coming together to do the clap and do the dance so that you can drive a better story for the business, drive more visibility, and tell a better story? So when I was running the wine business, a lot of times the brands were very transactional, but actually people drink wine based on storytelling. So the same thing, when I was working in the US at Ogilvy, we did a lot of pharmaceutical brands. We worked a lot on that. But of course, the medicine has to deliver. But at the same time, there's so many choices of medicine that's out there. Why would you choose this one over the other? So storytelling is imperative in driving more business. So I run business. I'm a designer by training, a marketer. I think that we all have to work together to drive a business forward with all these elements.
Amazing. What a great response. Thank you. So, Kathy, let's talk about KittyKat. Unusual name. What inspired you to start this tech-enabled content service, and what gap in the market are you filling?
Okay, so I've been working in brand strategy for years, helping founders, create visuals, end-to-end service. And I'm in the YPO, I talk to a lot of my friends and we are like, you need to scale your business. How do you scale your business? What's the biggest challenge brand owners face? So we could do everything from a brand strategy, but I realized that after time, a lot of the brands could not continue the conversation. And then I asked, why can't they continue the conversation? Production of visual assets and content is expensive. A lot of people have a misconception that, content creation is really simple. Just take my phone and create something like a podcast. Just let's record. But there's a lot of prep, a lot of time behind the scenes, a lot of editing. So that costs money. And a lot of brands find it very difficult to sustain that level of spend on their marketing spend to drive transactions. So I wanted to solve this challenge. I wanted to create a tech business to help me solve the visuals problem that will drive business. So I needed to find a solution because this is a big challenge for brands. So that's why I started KittyKat, to try to solve this problem, to create millions of visuals to drive billions of sales.
Amazing. And Kathy, what goes into building a brand, and how does KittyKat leverage technology to help brands?
So I think brands is what you try to do to make people feel. It's not about telling people what you do, it's showing them how they feel. It's an emotional resonance. And people, when they look at the visuals, they look at your brand, they decide whether they trust you, whether you resonate with them. Are you their vibe? So I'm all about using visuals to show and try and peg where your brand is so that people feel rather than tell. Because there's lots of stuff and lots of brands that tells function, but we want to make you feel. I want to bring you into my community. And how am I leveraging tech? The world has just been amazing to me. I think AI has been fantastic. It helps me create lots and lots of on-brand visuals using AI technology and the tools out there. So the time has never been better. So that's what KittyKat does for a lot of the brands. Amazing. So we have about 140 brands on our platform now.
Incredible, incredible. And, you also talk about building a strong consumer brand connection. Tell me, how do you define it, and why is it important for businesses in today's market?
So I think consumer brands, as we all know, is a very competitive space. And when people walk into a store, in a physical store, when they look at your brand online, how do they decide in their emotional space that this is the brand that they love and want to be associated with? So I think there's many channels. So I believe strongly in omni-channel, virtual, and being in store. You need to create community. You need to create a sense of emotional connection. You need to try to fulfill the challenges. You need to be there when they need you. You need to be personalized. So there's many, many channels and many ways to kind of create an emotional attachment to a brand, so that when they see your brand, they recognize it and they want to be part of your brand and they believe in your brand.
Well said. So my next question, Kathy, is that, and I've often said this, brands are living beings. They're like children, need constant nurturing. Yet there are some brands which survive 100 years and some which die very quickly. How can brands stay relevant for a long time?
Absolutely amazing. So if you come to my office, we have loads of actually old magazines, and all the way from magazines up to the 1800s. So Coca-Cola, they had Campbell, they had Heinz. And we did a kind of an exercise with my team, sharing about ads that was done in the 1800s all the way now, and brands that survived. So I think understanding what the market is, understanding the environment, and like you said, being a living being is almost like a child. The brand needs to evolve, it needs to grow. It's got an psychography, it's got an emotional resonance. Right. People feel for the brand. So I think treating it like a living being and understanding where the brand is going to grow and how it's going to grow is very important. So, understanding the market and how do you grow this living brand in these markets, and creating psychography, how people relate to the brand, and creating communities around the brand to talk about the brand, to share about the brand is really important.
Well said. My next question is, how important is storytelling in building strong consumer brand connections?
I would say that's the one thing that we all have to do: storytelling in our life, our personal brand, and sharing about what the brand makes you feel and how people have used it, rather than sharing about features. So the biggest thing that when I work with brands is that the founders are very, very passionate about what they create. So they always talk about the features. This product, it does this, it does that. A great example is that Apple had the iPhone has so many features. Do we use all of them? We don't. But what we want to do is we want to be part of this ecosystem. We want to be using an Apple phone because it looks cool. I want to feel young. I want to be part of technology. But in fact, the features, I would say a lot of brands like Samsung and the iOS, the other brands might have better features, but people still use Apple phones because they want to be part of the community. They feel it. They want to be there.
Well said. And when it comes to working with so many different brands, my question is, what are some of the common misconceptions or mistakes brands make when attempting to connect with consumers?
I think not enough of test and learn and design thinking. So I'm a big believer in design thinking and trying to understand where your client's journey is. And I think human behavior is hard to change. Having a great idea, but nobody adopting it is one of the biggest mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to go out to the markets and actually speak to people, test and learn. I'm a big test and learn. While we're building our platform at the moment, we are working with real brands. We're understanding their teams. We're understanding how they work. We want to be part of the ecosystem. We want to create an impact. We want to solve the challenge. So that's why we can create loyalty and people adopting, what brands create. So I think understanding the market and understanding how people behave in the journey is really important. Design thinking, test and learn, and then evolve and change and adapt.
And what would you say are some of the key elements to consider when developing a brand strategy to foster the strong connection with consumers?
I think, I use a lot of my facilitation skills and forum skills to be able to understand the team that executes it, and also bringing in people that would kind of use the brand as well, and then kind of bringing it together and trying to identify what those journeys are and testing them out. And then, being open, being, nimble, being able to understand what people's needs are. I think that will drive a strong brand. So that will drive loyalty and usability.
And my next question is that how can a brand maintain strong connections with their consumers over time, especially as audience preferences keep evolving and market conditions keep changing?
Absolutely. So that's why that's a big task. So I think for me, community building is important. So the brand guru always says, it's not what you say your brand is what they say your brand is. So Marty used to say that a lot in all his brand classes. So I think building a community, building a loyal following that would go through word of mouth sharing about how your brand evolves and how your brand actually solves the problem. That would be a great driver. So I think community building these days with a lot of social channels, you have a lot of platforms to be able to do that. I think that's really important to continue the conversation and keeping your brand at the top of mind.
And one of the questions that many especially startup brand owners asked me, and I'm going to ask you that question, is that in the social media platforms, there are so many of them. How does a brand manager determine which social media platform to focus on?
So this is exactly the same, like how you pick, which brand resonates with you. So it depends. If you are on LinkedIn, you know that it's a little bit more B2B driven, and it's a little bit more knowledge driven, solutions driven. If you're going for Instagram, it's very visuals driven. So I think for you, you really need to identify what your brand stands for and where your audience sits. And those are the channels that you'll play with. And I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of brands do is to try to be everywhere on every channel and spread themselves too thin. So I think there should be milestones on what you want to hit depending on where your audience sits to start, and then build on those and do really well on one or two channels. Because as you know, that not every content is suitable, every story idea is suitable for every channel. So we need to be very specific on what story angle fits what channels. It's just like when I was building magazines. I worked for women's magazines all my life. So my narrative is about women empowerment, about, helping women do as much multitask, how to kind of build women forward. So those were the magazines that I worked for, and those were the story ideas that we came. So how to create on point content for the right channel. So it doesn't mean that those channels are there. It may not be suitable for your brand, may not be the right place for the story angle that your audience is looking for. So I think that needs to be very clear from the start what the offering is.
Well said. But the other question, Kathy, is that I remember 4 decades ago when I was looking at branding as a young manager, we used to have this full page advertisements in newspapers and big billboards and cinema hall advertising. Today, everything is down to our mobile phone, and it's down to 10 seconds. How has communication changed? And how are you helping brands to communicate in such a short time?
Absolutely. So that's what I want to go into, because I came from that world too. When we used to create a big visual for a bus ad or a billboard, it takes days and months and great team to go on to create this visual that sits there for months. But now it's like you said, less than 10 seconds. So the world has changed. People's attention spans are shorter. There's lots of channels, lots of stuff going on. They are fast-paced readers. They scan. they slide, they swipe. So everything is a swipe away. So that's how we are doing visuals. Disposable digital assets that is on brand, at speed, on season. So what we want to do is create lots of visuals on brand, at speed, to drive the conversation, consistent reminder. So for me, example, I'm old, I still use Facebook sometimes, but a lot of people in our age group, how do they keep track of their friends and family around the world, sending photos, consistent communication, visuals? Oh, I think, he was in Provence over the summer. Oh, the son just came back to visit them. So it's this consistent visual communication that drives memory and top of mind for the brands. So it's no longer the big billboards that stays there for a long time. I'm not saying that they're not helpful. If you go to Times Square, you go to Japan, the big billboard still stays. That gives you trust of their big brands. And then the visual stores you see that you walk in to purchase a product, and online also needs to be top of mind. So I think it's a lot more complex these days. So a lot more complicated, but content creation is a must at speed, on brand, and consistent communication. Is just like me telling my kids, I've got 4 kids, can you please put the cup away after you finish drinking? Can you wash? So it's constant. So it kind of, hopefully when I say it a lot, it sits in their mind that this is what they need to do.
Well said.
So I compare it to my kids.
Well said. And the other aspect, Kathy, is the use of analytics. There's so much data available now on every little aspect, not just of the brand, but about the consumer. I'd love to get your perspective on how is analytics changing branding?
So that's what we're trying to build on our platform. So that piece is basically not an easy feat. So I think there's loads of analytics, but what is the call to action? So everybody is selling analytics, but what is the call to action? So that's a piece that, you need to kind of analyze. And for me, I think in order to get analytics and data, you need lots and lots of visual. So with one visual, you can't tell whether it's working against which visual. So that's why we have created KittyKat, to create lots of visuals for you to be able to test and learn. Because as we go through the journey of more customization and more bespoke journeys that will come, which is already coming anyway with AI, you need a lot more visuals to be able to kind of speak to your audience. So with more visuals and more content, you can drive more analytics and data analytics to drive more decision making in order to be able to see where and what works better for your brand.
Well said. I have time for 2 or 3 more questions for you. My next question is, how does customer experience, and CX is supposed to become a $1 trillion business in the next 10 years, how does customer experience play a role in strengthening consumer brand connections?
You have to walk the walk, talk the talk, whichever way comes first. So I could tell all these beautiful stories about you and all these beautiful visuals and beautiful videos, and if you have a physical store, I think we need to get internal buy-in, internal teams, internal branding is very important. So that's something that I worked a lot when I was in the US. Being able to convince your internal team on what the brand believes is very important, so that when people actually physically experience your brand, it reflects what you're trying to tell. The storytelling has to be reflected in a physical manifestation. If not, it's just not a holistic approach. So you could tell a beautiful story, and if I walk into your store, it's not the same, then I think then we have failed as marketers to be able to create a very beautiful, synergistic, holistic journey that kind of, create a brand story that resonates, that sticks.
Well said. So 2 more questions for you. My second last question to you is that how can businesses harness the power of data to create more personalized and relevant experiences for their customers?
So very, very well asked. There are a lot of platforms and technology out there that are trying to kind of use tech to be able to help create personalized journeys, so that they can also kind of do an omni-channel. So from a digital, once you become a member and of the community, they understand what you buy, so that when you go into the physical stores, they are also able to provide that kind of data to the team on site to be able to share the preferences that you would like. So I think that is what technology is trying to do, and more customization, more bespoke journeys. I don't think that we are 100% there, but I think there's a lot of tech companies out there trying to do that. And we are also trying to jump in to see how we can use visuals to try and drive that bespoke journey for brands, to drive a customized, personalized journey, so that you create a lot more stickiness with the brands. And I think that's an important offering that brands need to look into.
Wonderful. Thank you. And my last question to you, Kathy, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your amazing understanding of branding, what would you say are 3 lessons a young startup entrepreneur should keep at the back of their mind?
So I did think about that quite a bit. I think for me for branding is how you make them feel. That's number 1. Show, not tell. That's how I tell my kids as well, even though I'm always telling them what to do, is show them by examples. And a picture speaks 1,000 words. Use visuals to drive conversations. Visual speaks 1,000 words, rather than say, buy my product because I do this well. Show them use cases, stories to be able to show what you do, and people will resonate and they will stick with you.
Wonderful. And on that note, Kathy, and your amazing lessons, branding is all about making how consumers feel. And second, you said show, not tell, the power of visual communication. You just re-emphasized. Thank you for telling me about your own journey. Thank you for talking to me about KittyKat. So many different aspects of branding, marketing, technology, analytics, and customer experience. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh, and thank you. I'm very privileged and happy to be part of your show, and always here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.